Okay, so are you ready to dive into this?
Always.
This one's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it is.
This is the Mazan rape trial,
The Mazan.
and we've got articles, it seems like from every major news outlet.
Wow.
We've got RTL, France Culture, France 24, BBC, Reuters, the New York Times, and even CNN.
International coverage, for sure.
Yeah, and we're not just going to, read through the facts.
Right.
We really want to understand why this case has gripped the entire world.
I think that's what's so fascinating about it, right? On the surface, it seems so ordinary.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about some, criminal mastermind or anything like that.
Right.
This is Dominique Pelicot. He was just this average guy living in a small village.
Yeah.
And yet, for over a decade, he was drugging his wife, Giselle Pelicot,
Right.
and inviting men that he met online to come to their home to rape her.
It's just horrifying.
It really is.
It's just awful to even think about. And even worse, when you think about the number of people that were involved in this.
The scale of it.
Yeah. Over 50 men have already been convicted.
And there are still some 20 who are unidentified.
Yeah. And these weren't, like shady criminals or anything. I mean, there were firefighters, soldiers, a journalist, even a prison guard.
I even read that some of these guys lived within like a 50-kilometer radius of the Pelicots.
That's terrifying.
It really is. It just goes to show that sometimes the monsters that we fear,
Yeah.
they're hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. That's what makes what Giselle Pelicot did even more amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only did she survive all of this, she chose to waive her anonymity and make the trial public.
I mean, that's almost unheard of in France, isn't it?
Yeah, from what I understand, victims of sexual assault in France are almost always granted anonymity.
It's to protect their privacy, prevent further trauma. So for her to give that up is just incredible.
She really wanted the world to see this.
Yeah, to break that silence around sexual violence.
And I think she's done that and so much more.
She really has.
I mean, a lot of the articles we have call her like a feminist icon. That she's really inspired this like national conversation about sexual violence and like misogyny and everything.
And rightly so.
Yeah. And then there's the trial itself.
Oh, yeah.
That was just crazy. I mean, it lasted 3 months, 51 defendants.
Largest rape trial in French history.
And the courtroom was just packed every day.
Journalists from all over the world.
Yeah. And I think what really set this trial apart was just the amount of evidence they had.
Mountains of it.
Yeah, they had videos of the assaults, messages online between Pelicot and these men, and then, of course, Giselle's own testimony.
Yeah, it just paints such a grim picture, and just the way it was carried out.
Cold and calculated.
Yeah.
And the role of technology in this really can't be overstated.
No.
I mean, Pelicot met most of these guys online. He was using this website specifically for illicit encounters.
To plan the assaults, share videos.
Even brag about his crimes.
Yeah. I mean, this is where you really start to see what we call rape culture in action.
Hold on. I think rape culture is one of those phrases that like gets thrown around a lot, but I'm not sure everyone really understands it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, what it really means is like when sexual violence is just normalized, excused, or even like encouraged.
Oh, I see.
And, the victim is always blamed. The perpetrator gets the benefit of the doubt.
Got it. So how does that actually apply to this case?
Well, one of the things that was just chilling to read about was the defenses that some of these men used.
Yeah.
A lot of them argued that they thought everything was consensual because the husband was involved.
Oh, wow.
As if the husband's permission, means that the wife consents.
Like he owns her or something.
Exactly. It's just completely erasing her agency,
Yeah.
And that's a clear example of how ingrained these attitudes are. And it wasn't even just in the courtroom.
You mean like out in the public too?
Yeah. Even with all the evidence, there were still people who were questioning why Giselle didn't just leave sooner or why she didn't wake up.
No, that's awful.
It is. The victim blaming is just a hallmark of rape culture.
It's like they're saying she's responsible for what happened to her.
Yeah, and that just allows this cycle of silence and impunity to continue.
So even though she spoke out and these men were convicted, it seems like there's still a lot of work to be done.
Oh, a long way to go. I mean, the Mazan rape trial has really exposed this dark undercurrent in French society.
And it's a conversation that needs to continue.
For sure.
So this feels like a good place to pause.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll dive deeper into those societal repercussions of this.
Sounds good. Yeah, this case really has opened up, a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things is the role of online platforms in all of this. I mean, the website Pelicot was using, it's been shut down, right?
Yeah, French authorities took it down.
But it just makes you wonder how many other sites like that are still out there.
Oh, I'm sure there are tons.
And it's tough, right? Because how do you regulate that kind of thing without, like, stepping on free speech?
It's a fine line.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to censor people online or, like, stop a legitimate expression.
Right.
But on the other hand, these platforms can't just be, safe havens for criminals.
So what's the answer?
Well, I think this trial has shown that we need these companies to be more accountable.
Okay.
Like maybe stricter rules about what content they allow, or being more proactive about finding and removing users who are doing illegal stuff.
And what about, like, just regular users?
Yeah.
Should there be, like, more awareness about the dangers of online interactions?
100%. People need to be aware of the risks.
Yeah.
Being careful about who they talk to, not sharing personal info too easily, reporting anything that seems sketchy.
Right. It's like the internet can be amazing.
Oh, for sure.
But there's definitely a dark side to it, too.
No doubt.
Well, let's talk about the verdict for a minute.
Okay.
51 defendants, all found guilty.
Pelicot could the maximum sentence 20 years.
And the other men?
Well, their sentences range from 3 to 15 years. And some of those were suspended, meaning they won't actually go to prison unless they, violate their probation.
And there was, like, a lot of mixed reaction to that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some people felt like those sentences were way too light, especially for the guys who got suspended sentences.
Considering what they did.
Exactly. I mean, Giselle's trauma is going to last a lifetime.
And I know a lot of feminist groups were really outraged, right?
Yeah. They're saying it sends the message that these crimes aren't being taken seriously enough.
That's a good point.
It is. But it's also worth noting that, for some people, this verdict was seen as a victory.
Yeah.
It's a sign that the justice system is starting to take sexual violence more seriously.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
You said before that this case has been a real turning point for France.
Yeah.
What kind of changes are people actually calling for?
Well, a lot of people want tougher laws around sexual violence,
Yeah.
changing the legal definition of rape so it's clearer and easier to prosecute these cases. There are also calls for more funding for support services, things like counseling, legal aid, shelters for victims.
And it's not just about laws, right?
No, there's a real push for broader societal change. We need to challenge those deep-seated cultural norms we talked about earlier.
Like rape culture.
Exactly. People are finally talking more openly about consent, believing victims, the role that men have to play.
Yeah.
I've even seen a surge in men's groups that are focused on promoting healthy masculinity.
That's great.
It is. Men need to be part of the solution.
Oh, for sure.
Real change can only happen when everyone is involved.
Now, before we move on, I do want to touch on Giselle's children.
Okay.
I mean, they've been so supportive of their mom through this whole thing.
They have, and they've also spoken out about how betrayed they feel by their dad.
Yeah, there was a quote from Giselle's daughter that really stuck with me.
What was that?
She said, "Our family has been destroyed by this."
Wow.
It just shows how these crimes, they don't just affect the victim.
Right.
They impact everyone around them.
The ripple effects.
Yeah, the whole family.
And for them to speak out, to stand by their mother, to condemn what their father did, I mean, that takes so much courage.
It really does. And it's important for people to see that even after something like this, there can be healing.
Absolutely. There's resilience.
And even hope.
Right.
And while there's definitely a lot of positive change happening, it's also brought up a lot of anger,
Oh, yeah.
A lot of women feel like the system has failed them.
Mm-hmm. There have been protests, demonstrations, all organized by feminist groups.
And they have every right to be angry.
They do. Sexual violence has been ignored and dismissed for far too long.
And it seems like this case has really pushed those feelings to the surface.
Yeah. It's like it's forced people to confront some really uncomfortable truths about their own society.
It's not just a French problem either.
No.
This case has gotten attention all over the world.
It has. Politicians, activists, regular people, everyone's talking about it.
It's like Giselle's courage has sparked this global conversation about sexual violence.
Yeah. And it's given other victims the courage to come forward.
Our sources mention a surge in people reporting abuse, not just in France, but all over.
It's a reminder that this is a global issue.
And it needs a global solution.
Right.
I think this is a good place to take another break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll talk about what this case means for the future.
Looking ahead.
Okay, so we've talked about the trial, the verdict, like the whole impact on society.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to this, like, what now?
What happens next?
Yeah, like all this is done, what changes? What comes out of something as awful as this?
I think that's what everyone wants to know, right?
Yeah.
And it's tough. There's not an easy answer, but I think there are some, like, key takeaways from this that we can, like, use moving forward.
Okay, like what?
Well, first is just the power of speaking out, right?
Mm.
I mean, Giselle Pellicot's choice to break the silence and share her story.
Yeah.
It's really had this ripple effect that's bigger than anyone could have imagined.
Like, she really did give a voice to so many people who didn't have one.
Yeah. And our sources actually point to an increase in the number of reports of sexual violence after this trial.
Wow.
And a lot of people are linking that to Giselle.
Because she was so brave.
Yeah. Her story gave other people the courage to come forward.
To get justice.
Mm-hmm. And to know they aren't alone.
That's huge.
It is. And that brings me to the second takeaway, which is believing victims.
Okay.
I mean, for so long, victims of sexual violence have just been met with doubt, skepticism,
Yeah.
even blame. Right.
Right.
And this case really shines a light on that and starts a conversation about how we need to change how we respond to these accusations.
So it's about making it so victims feel safe to come forward.
Exactly.
Knowing you'll be heard and believed.
And supported.
Yeah, for sure. And that support, it can't just be words.
No, not at all.
It has to be action, you know? Better resources for victims, better law enforcement.
A justice system that actually holds these people accountable.
And this isn't just France, right?
Oh, yeah. This is everyone.
It's a global thing.
This trial has resonated with people all over the world because it reflects a universal struggle against sexual violence.
Yeah, it goes beyond borders and cultures.
Yeah, which is why I think the most crucial takeaway is that real change, like lasting change, it takes a collective effort.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's not enough for, like, just individuals to speak out, you know, or for victims to be believed.
Okay.
We need a change in the system.
Oh, I see.
A fundamental change in how we think about and address this.
Yeah.
And that means everyone has to be involved.
Yeah.
It means challenging stereotypes, calling out bad behavior, educating each other about consent,
Yes.
supporting organizations that are fighting against sexual violence.
It's recognizing that it's not a women's issue.
No.
This is everyone's problem.
It's a human issue that affects us all.
And that means men have to step up and be part of the solution.
Yes, for sure.
Communities have to come together to support survivors.
And lawmakers need to create laws that actually protect people.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge problem, right?
Very multifaceted.
And it needs, like, a bunch of solutions to fix it.
It does, but seeing the support for Giselle Pellicot and the global conversation that this has started, it gives me hope.
Me too. It shows that people are ready for change.
Yeah. And it shows how powerful one person's voice can be.
Yeah.
Giselle has said she hopes her story will prevent other women from suffering the same fate. And even though the pain she and her kids have been through can never be taken away, her courage has definitely made things better for the future.
It's amazing that even in such a dark, awful situation,
Yeah,
there's still hope, you know,
there is.
for healing and for justice.
And for progress.
The fight against sexual violence, it doesn't end with a guilty verdict.
No, it's an ongoing battle.
Yeah, we have to be constantly vigilant.
And unwavering.
Yeah.
And we have to work together to create a world where everyone is safe.
It's a battle worth fighting.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Mazan rape trial. We hope that this conversation continues, you know, share what you've learned, and that we can all be part of the solution.